Right, lads, we're on about hot goths today. And by that I mean the early English period of Gothic architecture. Yippee! There are more important things out there than a hot goth, specifically castles. Everyone loves a good castle. I'm telling you, if you go give a child an empty cardboard box and walk away for a bit, if you come back and that child hasn't installed a door, windows, murder holes, crenellations, and turned it into the fucking Imperial Palace, then there's something terribly wrong with that child. It's perfectly normal behaviour. Likewise, I think it's safe to say that every man who's picked up Minecraft in their time has eventually defaulted to a childlike state, broke ground, and built a castle. And that's what I'm doing today. I'm going to satiate the rabid stone mason that lives inside of me and build a big goddamn castle right on top of this cliff. Let me just whip out my super high-tech CAD software. It took me a while to decide what style of castle I wanted to stick with. You see, I adore the fantasy Gothic styles of 19th century German castles, and would love to make an episode on that sometime. But given my setting, I thought something more English would suit these white cliffs a little better. So of course I looked at some examples in the UK, and immediately settled on something French. The Normans came over in 1066, and to stop the good old Saxons from evicting them again, they built castles, the stone embodiment of a foreign power's domination. As you can see, I'm going to build one big central square keep, surrounded by a single curtain wall. I'm using two main castles for inspiration, Ludlow and Dover. Right, I'd better get started.
Gentlemen, today's fox.
I started the build by tracing out a plan with coloured wool. This can really help you plan out where things will sit best, and from what angles buildings will look good. I was particularly keen for the castle to look imposing when viewed from the harbour that I built last episode, so I spent a fair while flying back and forth imagining where the castle and towers would sit. Like I just mentioned, most of the images I'm using for my castle are from Ludlow and Dover, among a few other Norman and early English castles. However, I must admit, I've really enjoyed looking into the history of Dover Castle, and can't help but draw the parallels between Dover and my Minecraft White Cliffs. Even though my original inspiration for the map was the Yorkshire coast, I'll happily build an imitation of Dover Castle and pretend it's slightly further north. Built in 1180 by King Henry II, Dover Castle was an enormous political gesture. Dover was the gateway to Europe, and a fortress was needed to watch the channel. But more importantly, a palace was needed to entertain and flaunt this French nobleman's power over his British domain. So Henry built what was at the time the most expensive non-religious building in Western Europe. 800 years later, Dover Castle stands as his legacy as King of England. However, French or not, Dover Castle has served our island throughout our long history. During the Napoleonic Wars, earthwork walls were added and used as gun batteries. Dover Castle soon housed heavy artillery to protect the coast, and a need for barracks and storerooms became apparent. The Royal Engineers built a complex of tunnels 15 metres beneath the clifftop to house them. During the Second World War, the same tunnels were converted into a military command centre and an underground hospital. Admiral Sir Bertram Ramsay even directed the evacuation of troops from Dunkirk from Dover Castle's subterranean headquarters. After the war, the tunnels became a bunker that would have housed members of government in the event of a nuclear conflict. However, the plan was abandoned due to the realisation that chalk cliffs would not protect from radiation. But some of the tunnels are open to the public now, which is cool. Can we just take a moment to appreciate how much of a bop Beethoven's 7th Symphony is? Hella tunes. 1812 in the club and this tune comes on, I'd be fucking screaming. The Gatehouse by nature has to be an imposing and strong bit of architecture. I've loosely based mine on the Gatehouse at this, which I'm not going to pronounce, which is one of many castles in Wales. Whilst researching Dover Castle, I learnt that St Mary's Church in the castle grounds is actually built onto the remains of an original Roman lighthouse, which the Anglo-Saxon builders turned into the church's bell tower. The builders also recycled a lot of the original Roman tiles and incorporated them into the fabric of the church. I think that's bloody brilliant. The church has such a unique blend of history, I couldn't wait to try recreating it. But this brings me on to another point. Anyone who's had the pleasure of reading Fulgrim in their time will know that real beauty needs imperfection. This bland modernist shit that aims for total perfection is a load of crap. Likewise, I believe that any man with an ounce of taste would rather have a lass with daddy issues and a bit of mild trauma in their past than a bleached blonde with the personality of a brick. And like a mildly psychotic goth girl, I think that a building that's clearly had an interesting history, with cracks and moss and different materials, is at least more interesting than a pristine marble box. I like my women how I like my churches, Gothic and slightly damaged. I promise I'm not obsessed. Many castles would have a number of outbuildings within the walls to provide for the castle. Here, I decided to build a small storehouse, a blacksmith, some stables, and a well. As a child, we would often visit Richmond Castle. I vividly remember the gardens there and wanted to make something similar. A place where the castle's residents could grow herbs, medicines, and flowers for the castle.
These are the White Cliffs at Dover. These cliffs have repelled the great unwanted for thousands of years. This is the edge of England. Perched on top is Dover Castle, dominating all in its sight.
And there we go, one complete imitation of Dover Castle. As an imposing stone box to look over the town and scare the locals into submission, I think I've hit the spot. I've enjoyed this thoroughly, expect more castles in the future. Like I mentioned, I have an itch to dive into romantic German castles, and also I'd love to explore star forts sometime, amazing structures. If you haven't already, you should check out my first episode. You get to see me make this coast-themed map and I build the harbour that sits below where this mighty castle now stands. Thanks for watching, see you next time.
Are you winning, son?